Hello, September here, and I may have made a mistake. First of all, I thought, well, it's been raining and it looks like it's cooler. It's only like 75 outside, so I should film out there, right? It's a little humid. And now it seems the neighbors are outside too. I don't have full control of my surroundings, and I was gonna film yesterday and I thought I should not film yesterday because I wanted to get my thoughts together. I am going to tell my story today. I made a video a while back where I was just saying that in the face of all the things that were going on with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the protests, the riots, everything, I just wanted to put out there that I was listening and that I'm here. My mother-in-law commented and said, I just really felt like you were holding back and were really careful about what you were saying. I know this is a very sensitive topic and a very sensitive time because of the color of my skin. Things may not be taken how I'm trying to communicate them. So I guess I am kind of careful. I just wanted to come back to the topic. I really hate the word race because God didn't make multiple races of people. He made one race of people, the human race. And I'm trying to speak as one human to other humans. That's the heart of what I'm trying to say. There's this quote that keeps coming to me this year, and it says, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes." My perspective has been, that's just kind of how things have been going all year. You know, a news story comes out and you're like, what? I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And it kind of feels like maybe you can't believe all of it because there's a specific way that things are skewed coming out of the gate. So I just wanted to give my experience, my opinion, but I've been really concerned about what's going on, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. Let's just jump into it. Well, this year, it started with George Floyd. A video of a police officer with his knee on the neck of another man. And right out of the gate, a certain assumption is made about his reasons for doing that. And that is my first objection. From what I can tell, from my limited knowledge and understanding, I don't see that it was specifically racially motivated. And I'm probably gonna roll my eyes every time I say race. I'm sorry, but that's the word everybody else is using. I could not watch the whole video. I couldn't do it. I saw, I think, a short clip and then, of course, pictures. And it's heartbreaking. It's a human being. And you don't want to see something like that happening to a human being. Now, certain things have come out later on about whatever might have been in his system that may have contributed to that. I'm not even going to touch that. It was heartbreaking. A terrible thing happened to a human being. I'm going to leave it at that. And it was like, this is terrible. And then Christian leaders that I love and respect started rising up and jumping on board with the narrative that is based off of the assumption that that death was motivated by race. Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe they've done much more research than I. Of course, they've looked at both sides, right? Emotions are high. And of course, you've got the tension already with the COVID situation and see all these things that keep happening this year. And it just feels like it's to cause division and dissension. And I hate that. I hate it so much, especially in the body of Christ. I'm seeing riots, I'm seeing peaceful protests, because there's both. And I'm sorry for all the outside noise. So a very good friend of mine sent me a link to an Instagram live with Christine Kane called a Conversation on Race and Restoration with Dr. Anita Phillips. And that was on May 28th. It's still up there, you can watch it. Take what you want from it. This is my perspective on what I saw. I started watching it because I felt like if I'm not doing things like watching those kinds of videos or whatever, that I'm racist or whatever the term is. It's not racist, but like kind of racist. And I was like, I have a feeling I know what's gonna happen here, but I feel like I have to watch it because it's about what other people think. I know that I don't feel certain ways about certain people, but I feel like I have to. I'm trying to be knowledgeable And it's unfortunate that there's this need to please other people in me. It makes things a little more muddy. Whatever the reason, I did start watching it. So I started watching it, and I'm just gonna try to talk about the parts that I did watch, because eventually I did stop. You know, they were talking, and Christine Caine is Greek Australian. And she's a really cool lady. I love Christine Caine. She's amazing. I've heard many of her sermons, and she just seems like an amazing woman. And Dr. Anita Phillips seemed like a very nice woman. She was talking about how we've brought original religions to Christianity, and groups have different values, and who you are and where you're from shapes how you perceive someone's suffering. I could feel where we were going just based off of other things that I've been seeing, and I could feel it coming, but I was really trying to push through it because I wanted to be open-minded. I wanted to hear, at least so I could be like, I did watch it and I understood. I may not have agreed with it, but I heard it and I just tried to listen. She said, can I test your audience? That Dr. Phillips did. Let's say you've got an ancient tribe, and that ancient tribe, in their creation story, their God handmade each person from the ground and then made enough people for a village and breathed life into them. And then the God lived among the people and protected them. And then she said, and then the second ancient tribe, the gods make a man and a woman out of two different trees. The couple becomes the parents of the world. The gods left to live away in the skies and watch people deciding who lives and who dies in battle. And she said those are the stories of the Aruba and the Norse. And she said one of the groups is more about the group, the other is more individuality, one is more about high authority versus relational authority, and then saying basically we're describing white versus black Americans right now. This does not sound like a good place to go. She talked about the 3/5 compromise, and that's in Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. You can look it up for yourself and read it. Christine Caine was like, you know, not all of you are Americans, I'm sure, and so I found out that it was in their law that they only valued black people at 3/5 of just a white person. And so I was like, I should look this up. So I did. According to the U.S. Constitution.org, the actual article section thing, representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. The other persons were slaves. Then I read some more of the usconstitution.org. The 1787 Constitutional Convention addressed the apportionment in the House of Representatives and the number of electoral votes each state would have in presidential elections based on a state's population. The southern states wanted to count the entire slave population. This would increase their number of members in Congress. The northern delegates and others opposed to slavery wanted to count only free persons, including free blacks in the North and South. From what I'm gathering, and from the sources that I've seen and read, the South wanted each of their slaves to be counted as a whole person so that they had more people in the House of Representatives and more electoral votes, meaning the South would have more power. Slaveholders would have more power to have slavery, and the North would have less power to, even oppose slavery. That is why they had the 3/5 compromise. And if you have a source that disproves that, I'd love to hear it. It wasn't saying that black people are only worth 3/5 of a human being. It was saying, as far as representation, they're worth 3/5. We only count them at 3/5. The North did not want to give the South so much power. The South being people who owned slaves. If you're a slave, you didn't have any power anyways. But the people who were representing the slave masters, they would have the power. Christine Caine, she's not from the US, and she said she'd been doing a lot of research. I'm glad that she's been doing research, but I think there is some more research to be done. Dr. Phillips was saying that dehumanization has already been passed down to us culturally. Then she mentioned a study from 2016, and this was very interesting to me. She said, police officers look at pictures of white and black boys and guess their age. Dr. Phillips said it was to see if black boys were perceived to have the same innocence that white boys were perceived to have. So it said that cops overestimated the age of black boys by 4.5 years compared to the white boys. Then they primed the officers with images of apes and cats. After seeing the ape, they would overestimate the black boy's age even more, but underestimate the age of white boys. And then she said the cat image had no effect. She said it means white boys maintained innocence longer than black boys. She said it was disturbing that these images were able to bring up a not conscious thought, but that is a thought that is ever present. Officers who overestimated black boys' age after the ape correlated with violence against black boys in their line of work. And again, I encourage you, watch it for yourself. I will try to remember to link that video in the description below so you can watch for yourself. This is what I was getting from what she was saying. It was interesting to me the use of the word innocence in a scientific study, or I assume it was supposed to be a scientific study. Maybe it has a different use in scientific studies, I don't know. But innocence is a strange word to me to use in a scientific study, and saying that because police officers overestimated even more after seeing pictures of apes, that means that dehumanization is in our subconscious. I was watching this and I was getting angry. White people that are angry, except to call them racist, but I'm also allowed to have emotions, so it's a thing. But I was telling Bobby, I'm just so like, they're saying these things, making these assumptions, and I can't. I just can't. And he was like, then stop watching it. I said, no, I have to watch it. I just felt like I had to prove that I'm not racist, that I'm willing to listen. But after the whole 2016 study with the cops and the ape and the cat and the boys, I had to stop watching. I mean, she did make a good point that if you see a black boy who's 15 and you estimate that he's 20, you're gonna treat him differently. That makes sense. But does that mean that the cops are racist? Or does it mean, kind of a tangent here, sometimes I'll complain to Bobby and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so white and I'm married into a black family, and I'm afraid that when I get older, we're gonna be in a family photo and they're gonna be like, who's this old lady and this young guy? Like, why is she in their this old white lady in their picture? We don't age the same way. And I hypothesized, and I could be completely wrong. Is it possible that generally, and again, I don't just spend time looking at boys all the time, because that would be weird. Don't do that.
Why would I do that?
Is it possible that black boys may look older than white boys? I don't know. I don't know. Is that a physical reality? No idea. She was taking it to mean that dehumanization is in our cultural DNA. So finally, I took Bobby's advice and stopped watching. And then our pastor preached a sermon about it, and I was like, oh no. So unfortunately, I got stuck in the sermon, because he usually has like 4 points in a sermon, approximately. And the first point in the sermon was, admit that racism is real. I had a problem with that right out of the gate. And you're like, why would you have a problem with that? Racism is real. Exactly. It's like, who are you talking to that doesn't believe racism is real? I'm not gonna say that. I know racism is real. Why would you feel the need to make that the first point of your sermon? And to me, that means either you're talking to some weirdos, or you have a different definition of racism than I do. And there is a new definition of racism these days. There's racism, and then there's systemic or institutional racism. I'm going to read you the definitions so that we can go from there. I like definitions, people. I like words. I've already said this. Racism, from dictionary.com, says prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. That's real. People have been hating each other for stupid reasons for thousands of years, whether it's the color of their skin, whatever region they were born in, what tribe they're in. But the other definition of racism that's going around these days that is picking up popularity is systemic racism. And I looked it up and I could not find a definition in an official resource from, I Googled it, so yeah. In a USA Today article, there's a quote from the NAACP president, Derek Johnson, and he says that systemic racism, which is also called structural racism or institutional racism, is systems and structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantages African Americans. It's very specific. The other definition of racism includes everybody. Typically, it's a marginalized minority, but it leaves room that everyone can hate everyone for stupid reasons. But in this one, it's specifically systems and structures and procedures and processes that disadvantages African Americans specifically. There's some things that I've seen where and I haven't looked up for myself, so take it with a grain of salt. But from what I've heard, to get into a really good college, which again, I've never been to, so whatever, that you have to get a higher score in SAT or ACT, I don't know, to get in if you're a certain race. You have to have a higher score if you're white than if you're black. And you have to have a higher score if you're Asian than if you're white to make it, which is interesting. That seems like a systemic thing to me, but it's not specifically against African Americans, so it doesn't count as systemic racism, because this is a very specific definition. That's where I stopped in the sermon. I mean, I continued watching it, of course, but it was really hard to get past that because I felt like we must have different definitions of racism if one of the main points of your sermon is that I have to admit that it's real. Unfortunately, racism is not going to stop while we're all here. It's not going to, unfortunately. And it's like poverty. Jesus said the poor will always be with us, but that doesn't mean we don't help them. That doesn't mean that we don't try. We don't do the loving thing. Knowing that racism is here to stay doesn't mean we don't try to have conversation. The neighbors are out in their pools, so you may hear some more noise. That's just where we're at. I'm gonna take a drink of water because I can. So as a person, you represent different groups of people, and you know that going out that you represent those groups of people. I represent white people. I represent women. I represent homeschooled people. I represent Christians. I represent people that love Lord of the Rings. I represent a lot of groups of people. If you only know one or two of a certain group of people and it's not a good experience, you may have a bad taste in your mouth about those people, whether it's people that homeschool or Christians or white people. That doesn't make it okay. Obviously, you want to be the best who you can be, whatever groups you fall into, because you're going to be many things. But throwing somebody under the bus and saying that, yeah, that's it, you're racist, it's over, it doesn't mean there's no redemption for them, that they can't change. People can change. What you can't do, though, is force people to change. What you can do is have a conversation. You can be the best person you can be interacting with them. And unfortunately, the more people cry racist, and to be fair, in that Instagram live, she said, we're not fighting against explicit racism. We're fighting against, like, I guess the opposite would be implicit racism, subconscious racism. When you're talking about, you know, like, that's my heart. That's a character thing. We live in a day and age when many people get upset if you assume their gender based off of their appearance. But you can assume based off of my appearance, the color of my skin.
Which is super white. I know it's so white, it's blinding.
Bobby says he can see me in the dark, but that means you can judge my heart. You can tell me what my heart looks like inside. That doesn't seem right to me. I don't know, because it feels like the same people are saying those things. I know it's not completely overlapping, but it's something I thought about. You can't assume my gender, but you can assume whether I'm racist or not. The more people shout racism from the rooftops and say everything is racist, all the systems are racist, the more racists you're gonna see. They're gonna come out of the woodwork. For example, Nick Cannon. I recently saw a clip of him, and the impression that my paraphrase was, he was saying that white people originally, they became violent. My back. That they became violent because they didn't have melanin, and the sun began to destroy their skin. And they were acting out of insecurity or self-esteem problems or something.
What? What are you talking about?
So I'm insecure about my skin? I mean, he was talking about, I guess, my ancestors. Black people have compassion and have soul. White people don't have soul. And it seemed pretty racist to me. Like, it wasn't like implicit racism. It was racism. And I guess he also said some things about Jews. From what I can tell, it was the anti-Semitic remarks that got him fired. Not about white people and the things he said about them. I definitely don't have to assume his heart because he put it out there. Well, I'm hearing that racism is mostly implicit and it's systemic. It's impossible to argue those things. How can I prove to you that our laws and rules are not racist if you are convinced that they are racist? And how can I prove to you what the state of my heart is? How can you prove to me what the state of my heart is? How can we have a conversation? We can't have a conversation. And I believe that having honest, civil conversation can change hearts and minds. But if you've already assumed the state of my heart, I mean, you've given up on me. I want to know your stories. I want you to tell me your story. But you can't tell me the shape of my heart. Only God knows my heart besides me. And yes, emotions are important. They tell us something is wrong, either inside of us or from something else. So it is important to notice your emotions. It's important to notice that and figure out where they're coming from. What are your emotions based off of? Are they based off of facts? If they're based off of facts, then follow it. But if during your research you realize that your emotions are based off of things that people told you that ended up not being true, then what do you do with those emotions? That's for you to figure out. And I also think it is important when we say Black Lives Matter, because Black lives do matter. They matter so much. Most importantly, they matter to God. Jesus came and he died for all. He died for Black people too. And that's the greatest love of all. Your lives do matter. They do. Make sure you know who you're listening to. Make sure that the people you're listening to have your best interests at heart and aren't just trying to make a profit. And they're not just trying to pursue their own narrative. I plan to put a link to the About section for the Black Lives Matter organization in my description so you can read for yourself. And I do want to kind of end off with another story. Part my experience, part hearsay. So take it for what you will. I was standing at my register facing the front door and I hear the customer service manager say, "Have a great day." And then these two women leave and I hear them, and then as I start to hear them and I start to turn to see them, I hear them say, "It's 'cause we're Black." And I was like, and so it was these two Black ladies that I had checked out of my line a little bit ago. And I was like, and I looked over and there was a customer and she looked at the customer service manager and the customer service manager said, "I'm just gonna let it go." And I was like, so I asked later, I said, what exactly happened there? What was going on? And she said that those ladies, after they had checked out in my line, they had gone back to the seasonal department. Now, mind you, the seasonal department between now and Christmas is insane. They try to get as many cashiers and people to help in seasonal. We're making way for Christmas. That's the thing. That's how it works. So these ladies go back and are looking at some things. And one of the cashiers that we have, and she's this beautiful girl. I think she's still in her teens. And she has these huge eyes. Like, I say that she has two faces, two expressions. I mean, there's some in between, but mostly two. There's the very mischievous expression like, "What are you doing?" what have you been up to? And then there's like this scared deer face, and it's adorable. But she's just this girl. This is her first job. She doesn't have any, I'm sure she's got life experiences, but she's young. We'll call her Kaylin. So Kaylin is back helping in the seasonal department, and these ladies are looking around. Well, she's darting around from aisle to aisle, helping everybody with the seasonal stuff. Well, according to the CSM, the ladies had noticed her darting around and were saying that she was doing that because they were black. As far as I can tell, from the people that I know at work, I do not believe that to be the case. I think that there was a big assumption that was made on the part of those ladies. Now, I will say that assumption could be based off of some very real experiences. I'm not denying that. There could be those people out there that if you're black and you walk into a store, they're automatically looking at you, make sure you're not stealing stuff. In my store, I'm more concerned about the shady looking white druggies coming through. That's where I'm at. I mean, I'm not gonna be racist. Sometimes druggies are black too, so. But again, the ladies could have had some very real experiences with racism. I'm not saying they don't. You can think things. You can make assumptions. That's your right as a human being. Doesn't mean it's a good idea or that it's true. And from what I know of this girl, Kaylin, I think she had no reason to think that about those ladies. I've never heard or seen anything from her to make me think otherwise. And I've never heard a manager say something that was only based off of someone's skin color. So I don't see the managers telling her to do that. And I don't see her doing that on her own. So I believe her. I believe, that she was just doing her job. She was just helping in seasonal, and it's hectic over there. It's gonna get worse as we get closer. So just kind of an example of how we can assume the worst about each other based off of possible past experiences that are very real or not real. I don't know. I don't know their life story. And as a white person, there's been a lot of times when I've been like, oh my gosh, did I say something offensive? Oh my gosh, I wasn't trying to be offensive, but after I said that thing, maybe it's offensive. Whether it wasn't or was, I don't know, but it's tough. And I know that it's a possibility that if I am perceived to be racist, that I could lose my job, I could lose my social media platform. There's a lot to be lost here for being perceived as racist. I'll try to link the Instagram live down below, as well as links to the Black Lives Matter about me pages, and you can read for yourself, because I don't want you to just take it from me. I'm not trying to take over the conversation. I'm trying to contribute to it. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be, but I am a human being who can empathize and love and grow. Next time I will see you for my next bullet journaling video. I hope that you were able to take something out of this, whether you agree or disagree. I think that the best thing that you can do at this point in time is to pray for wisdom and to be informed as much as you reasonably can. There's so much going on right now. There's so many decisions to be made on a personal level as well as a cultural level that it's kind of overwhelming, and you've got to do what you've got to do. And if you want to talk to me about this or like have a conversation, please reach out to me on Instagram. Send me a message at my September story Instagram account. If it's hateful, I probably won't respond. I'll pray for you because I want what's best for you. But you say what you've got to say. And thank you for watching. If you've gotten this far, I applaud you. You have a good day.